It was not a god's wood, not truly. The Red Keep's little garden had a pool of green water the size of a small shield and the scent of warm stone, lemon trees, and old dust. But no carved face waited in a white tree to hear what a Northman told it. The pale trunks here were smooth, their leaves whispering without understanding. Ned Stark knelt anyway and set his palm upon the water. He watched his reflection blur with the ripples, his beard gone threadbare with care, lines deeper at the corners of his eyes. The city hummed beyond the walls, 1,000 carts and 10,000 feet grinding the day into heat and noise. He could taste it in the back of his throat. Smoke, brine, sour wine, something sweet fermenting. A Northman could grow used to it, perhaps. He had not, and likely never would. Danger had its taste as well, metallic and quickening, and that taste was in every cup here. Footsteps scuffed lightly on gravel behind him. He did not look until the steps stopped and stood waiting, patient as a cat in a sunbeam. Varys wore violet silk today, with a faint scent of cloves that did not quite cover the powders he favored. "My lord hand," Varys purred, patting forward to kneel where the stone was cool. "I have a matter I hardly dare speak aloud." "Then don't," Ned said. The water cooled his fingers as if he had dipped them in the springs below Winterfell. "Bring it to me plainly." Varys's mouth tightened with counterfeit sorrow. "Plainly is often perilous, yet plainly I shall. The little birds have brought a song of sharpened claws. Lions are restless when the boar goes hunting." "Robert is riding," Ned said. He had seen the king go, wine-flushed and loud, with Renly's laughter in his wake and the hound brooding in his. He always rides for the boars in the end. He thinks to find himself between tusks and screams, and come back to tell it louder. "Or not at all," said Varys. He made a delicate gesture, the flourish of a man who wrapped gifts well. "If the worst should befall, the queen will be swift. The guard of the city shifts with the wind, does it not? And she commands many winds." Ned rose. "Say it. If there are pieces on the board you would not lose, move them now, quietly, or watch the lions toy with them." Varys's lashes dipped. "The girls are pretty pieces, pretty and beloved." The heat pressed close. Ned pictured Sansa's earnest mouth forming her fantasies of court and golden-haired princes and songs. He pictured Arya with a scab on her knee and a wiry defiance to her jaw that was all Brandon and all Lyanna. "Do you tell me to run?" he asked. "I tell you nothing at all," Varys said softly. "I humbly remind the hand that ravens fly quicker than men, and some ships are quicker than ravens." Ned turned the words over in his hands as if they were coins minted with different faces each time they caught the light. He was tired of secrets and coin faces, but he knew a true thing when he heard it. "Thank you for the warning." Varys bowed as if he had gifted nothing. "My lord is kind," he said, and glided away among the lemon trees. Ned stood a moment longer, feeling the shape of the next steps settle inside him like a stone placed with care in a wall. He did not go first to the Tower of the Hand or to the small council's chamber. He went to find Yoren of the Night's Watch in a wine-sour court behind the flea-bottom inns where the Black Brothers gathered recruits and lice. Yoren's black cloak was as greasy as ever, and his face was one long stubble. "Stark," he grunted, when Ned came close enough to cast shade. He sat with his back to a wall that looked like it might flake away at a sneeze, a wooden tankard cradled in his great hands. "If you've come to take the black, I can't promise you a warm bed. Only one we got's taken up with fleas and hard nights." "I need a road you know better than most," said Ned. "The road to a ship whose captain's tongue is simple and his pockets deep." Yoren's eyes were shrewd, peering out from under thick brows. "Salt Road, then. Gulltown you want." "The Vale," Ned said. "Gulltown first. Safer than the Trident if lions stir," Yoren agreed. "Their claws don't reach as far on water, yet." He scratched his cheek. "I've a man who'll see 2 maids and a septa to a clean deck if paid proper." "Not 2 maids," said Ned. "My daughters." Yoren's gnarled fingers tightened, and his glance softened for a heartbeat. "Aye, well, best be quick and quiet. Night's Watch knows quiet." "Tonight," said Ned. I will send them down at dusk with only what they can carry. Yoren drained his cup. When he lowered it, the humor bad as cheap wine had burned away. Lions have ears in every alley. Better your girls look like flea-ridden gutter snipes and go with me than totter along in silk with a parade. I can hide 2 little birds under my wing a ways, see them to a ship's cradle before the queen's handmaids have their hair combed. You'll be paid, Ned said. Yoren said gruffly, but not for coin, for the wall. You'll owe me boys with strong arms when the snows come. Send them north when you can. Ned nodded, then clasped the watcher's forearm. You'll have them, he said, and he meant it. He told Sansa first because she would cry and he did not want her tears at the end. She was with Septa Mordain in a narrow chamber draped in blue silk. A seamstress hovered over a gown meant to float like dawn mist. Sansa turned from the looking glass, her face bright. Father, she said. Lady is gone, but the queen says perhaps I'll have a little dog instead and we leave for the Vale, Ned said softly. He dismissed the seamstress and the Septa with a glance that brooked no argument. Septa Mordain pursed her lips, but Sansa's eyes had gone round with delight. The Vale, she breathed. To see Aunt Lisa? Will Prince Joffrey come too? He says he's never seen the Eyrie and she trailed off under his look. You and Arya will go with the Septa, Ned said. Tonight, quietly. There are worries I would not lay on your shoulders. You'll be safe with your aunt. He touched her cheek, rough thumb against fair skin. Listen to the Septa. Watch, learn, be cautious in your words. But we were to go north after the tourney, Sansa protested, her voice small and stricken at once. Mother will be waiting at Winterfell, and Prince Joffrey will. Her mouth trembled. She was a girl with a head full of songs and a heart that had learned to beat in time with them. Ned took her by the shoulders. Sansa, he said gently, I need you to be brave for me, the way you were when you spoke to the queen after the thing in the woods. Sansa's lashes shimmered. I only told the truth, she said faintly. You told what you thought was true. He smiled, a brief and painful thing. We must all try to do as much. There are truths I'll teach you when you come home. Will you come with us? She blurted, hearing the shape of loss too late. I must stay, he said. The king needs me. The king, she echoed, and bit her lip so hard a bead of red stood out on it. I don't want to go, father. If I go, Prince Joffrey will think. He will think you obey your father. It is a good start for a queen to know obedience, and when to disobey. He kissed her brow. No more tears now. Pack what you need and nothing you love too much. Leave the rest. Arya was with Syrio Farrell in a sun-washed room that smelled of oil and wood shavings. She wore breeches and the scowl she reserved for the Septa. Syrio made her stand on one leg on the edge of a bench while he tapped her shoulders with a stick, faster and faster until she stopped thinking and simply moved, a leaf on a stream. When she saw Ned, Arya hopped down with a grin and wiped her sleeve across her sweaty face. Father, she said, Syrio says I am quick as a waterfly. He also says breakfast was a crime and I'm to tell cook that grapes are not a meal. Breakfast was a crime, Syrio agreed gravely. It did not fight back. He inclined his head to Ned. The girl has legs like a colt and a temper as any colt will. She will learn. She must learn now how to keep a sword she can't carry, said Ned. To Arya he said, You and your sister sail tonight for the Vale. Her face changed in a heartbeat. From delight to a bright, hungry cunning he knew well. To mother, to your Aunt Lisa. Your mother is on the Trident with your uncle. She took Tyrion Lannister to the Eyrie to answer for his crimes. If the road is safer than the river, I'll eat a stone. You will go by sea. Arya rubbed her nose the way she did when she was thinking. Am I being made to go because of Sansa? You are going because I say, Ned said mildly. You will obey the Septa. You will do as she bids. And you will not take Syrio's wooden sword on the ship. Needle, Arya corrected, bristling. Jon gave it to me. It isn't wood.
Ned waited.
Arya glowered, then kicked the floor with the blunt toe of her shoe. I won't leave Needle. You will leave it or you'll never carry it again. Sirio looked between them, smiling like a man watching a play he had seen before. Sometimes, little cat, the water must flow around a stone. Arya's eyes flashed. She was all motion even when she stood still, the pulse of some fierce music beating in her head. Can I take it sealed in a chest? She said at last. Wrapped up and hidden so the Septa can't find it. Not even if she tears everything apart? I will take it, Ned said, to her surprise. Give it to me, and I will see it waits for you at the Eyrie. Trust me this far, Arya. She stared at him a long moment, then turned and fetched the slender sword from its hiding place under a loose floorboard. Her fingers lingered on the plain hilt, but she handed it across. The weight of it in Ned's hands was finer than he liked. This was not a child's toy, and its promise frightened him more than the iron of a greatsword ever had. He kissed Arya's hair and left them to their goodbyes. He wrote then, too many letters and too few, to Lisa, to Nestor Royce at the Gates of the Moon, to Lord Gerald Grafton at Gulltown, to Vayan Poole in the Tower of the Hand with instructions in coin. He sealed each with direwolf wax and the steel certainty that if he waited another day, he would never get to finish sealing them. At dusk, the city smelled of tar and fish and lantern smoke. The girls came muffled in plain cloaks, their hair plaited simply, their slippers dusted so they did not shine. Septa Mordain, stiff as a spear, bristled with disapproval that could not find a target. Yoren met them near a street of net menders with their needles clicking and their talk as sharp. Head down, he told Arya. You little bird, don't look at every shining thing. He grunted at the Septa and the captain waiting with him, a narrow man with gull-bleached hair and rings in one ear. Lord Gerald Grafton's seal had gone before them and opened the ship's gangplank like a mouth. The captain made a show of bowing. Decks clean and sails ready, my lord hand, he said. Sansa shot one last look back, to the heights where the red keep stabbed at the sky like a broken tooth. The hound's laugh drifted from some alley, then the roar of a crowd where a mummer's farce made a punchline of kings. She swallowed and put her hand in Arya's. Arya squeezed it hard enough to hurt. They went aboard by lantern light. The deck smelled of pitch and a salt that was not Winterfell's clean brine but something older and more traveled. Nets hung like sleeping ghosts. Sansa hugged Septa Mordain and drew breath to cry and did not. Arya went to the rail and leaned out until the bull-necked mate told her to get back before she tumbled to the fish. Yoren's hand landed briefly on Ned's shoulder. I'll see them to Gulltown, he muttered. If the sea takes them, I'll drown first. That is not necessary, Ned said. His throat felt as tight as if a mailed fist squeezed it. Thank you. Save your thanks for the wall, Yoren replied, and for your gods. The ship slid from mooring with a sullen creak and a sighing of ropes. Slowly, the crane jaws of the dock fell away. The city diminished, light by light, into a smear of gold and red on the dark curve of the river mouth. Wind pressed at Sansa's cloak and tugged strands of her hair free so they whipped and tickled her lips. Arya claimed a coil of rope as a throne and stared out until her eyes streamed with the sting of salt. What do you see? Sansa asked because it was safer to ask something than to say nothing. Open, Arya said with fierce satisfaction. It's all open. Septa Mordain sat with her hands folded, refusing the captain's offer of wine that tasted like a cask had wept into it for a year. The Septa's gaze roamed the darkness as if it were a room full of men whose whispers she might hear and correct. We are bound for Gulltown only, she told the girls. If you are thinking of nonsense, unthink it now. You will meet your aunt and you will be quiet and thankful and forget these wild fancies of swords and princes. Princes are not wild fancies, Sansa said before she could stop herself. Princesses wed them. It is the way of songs, Septa Mordain said sharply. Remember that the seven look more kindly upon the vices of those who do not parade them before a crowd. Arya stuck out her tongue at the darkness where the Septa could not see. The seven have little to do with mules and mountains, she said. And mountains, they say, fly in the Vale. Mountains do not fly, Septa Mordain said. Men do, when the Lady of the Eyrie wills it. The sea had its own small torments. Sansa's belly rebelled for a day and a night. Arya laughed until the same rebellion came upon her and then was grimly silent. Gulltown's harbor was a gray bowl, walled with stacked ships and lamed gulls that hopped and cried for fish guts. Lord Grafton's house loomed above the quay, windows like half-lidded eyes. The captain presented them there to a steward in blue and white, who bowed so courteously that Septa Mordane's spine finally relaxed by a finger's breadth. "We have a mule girl to take you up the mountain," the steward said. "Her name is Maya. You'll need mules. Feet fail up there, and hearts if the eyes are foolish." Maya Stone was waiting in the stable yard, her hair in a tangle, her cheeks browned by sun and wind and too much honest laughter to meet with a proper lady's approval. She looked at Sansa and Arya with quick, appraising eyes and a smile that came ready to be shared. "You're for the Eyrie?" she asked. "It's late in the season, but mules don't mind. They like the air. Septa, you'll ride with me. Little birds, you'll each have a sure-footed old man under you. They know the steps like a Septon knows his prayers." "Do not call them birds," Septa Mordane chided. "They are the daughters of Lord Eddard Stark, the Hand of the King." "So they are," Maya said easily, "and it does not change what the mountain will do if a foot goes wrong. Come. The mules are stubborn and gentle as judges." Arya loved the mule at first sight, because he flicked his ears like he was listening for a secret. She named him Grit in her head because he had a speckled nose that looked dirty even when brushed. Sansa mounted more slowly, hands white on the pommel, the mule shifting under her with the deep patience of a thing born to carry burdens that thought it knew better than those it carried. They set out through Gulltown's upper gate and began the long ascent through the Vale. The world narrowed to a path hacked from a cliff's shoulder, to rope bridges creaking like very old men, to switchbacks bitten out of grass and stone. The air thinned and grew like iced wine. Breath steamed white. The mists were not mists but clouds. They moved below their feet like slow rivers. Maya rode easily ahead, seat light, speaking to the mules by name and endearment. "Not that step, old man," she'd murmur. "Oh no you don't. There now. Show the little birds how a gentleman climbs." At the bloody gate a man in mail with a fox's face hailed them. "Hold, in the name of Lord Robert Arryn," he called, and his men set spears across the road with a neatness that made Sansa's stomach tighten again. "Sirs," Maya said cheerfully, reining in. "It's Maya Stone from Gulltown with guests for the Eyrie. The Hand's daughters." The knight eyed them gravely and then took off his helm. "Septa Mordane," he said, with a bow to the rigid figure on the mule beside Maya's. "And girls, I am Ser Donnell Waynwood, Knight of the Gate. We had word. The Vale is closed to war, but not to kin. You'll have guest rights and the high air. And this is a better place than most to be while storms blow." "Any place is better than most if it is not King's Landing," Septa Mordane sniffed. "Aye," Ser Donnell said, surprising Sansa with a wryness she would have ascribed to men in taverns, not knights in mail. "Aye, you'll pass. Mind the steps. The mountain does not care for your north or south." Beyond the gate the path tightened more. Sansa learned quickly not to look down. Arya learned even quicker to look down with a fierce joy and then look away before the joy became fear. "You have no fear?" Sansa whispered when they stopped in a shelter of boulders to drink water so cold it hurt her teeth. "Of course I do," Arya said. "I just like it." It was afternoon when the Eyrie thrust itself out of cloud. Sansa saw walls like clean bone and towers like candles frozen in the act of dripping. The sky was bluer here. The wind was thinner. The mules clopped into a courtyard polished by generations of hooves and heels until the stone gleamed like old wax. White banners stirred, stitched with the falcon and crescent moon. Sentries with blue cloaks smudged the edges of the parapets. Lisa Arryn came to meet them in a pale gown that made her skin look like milk left too long on a frost. She was all small motions, fingers smoothing fabric already smooth, eyes flicking from Sansa to Arya and back as if they were little birds indeed and might flutter away. Behind her toddled little Lord Robert Arryn, his lip damp, his gaze enormous and unfocused. He clung to his mother's skirts and peered out. "Sister's children," Lisa said, and her mouth made a shape like a smile without quite reaching it. "You should have come home sooner, Aunt Lisa," Sansa said, dipping a curtsy. "We thank you for receiving us." Arya tried to bow on the mule and nearly fell off. "Aunt?" she echoed without much conviction. Her eyes were everywhere at once, noticing the height of the towers, the way the wind sang through the arrow slits, the door heavy with iron. Lisa's hands caught at Arya's shoulders and turned her as if she were a doll to be examined for cracks. "Cat's girls," she murmured. There was hunger in the way she said it and something like triumph. "You will be safe here, safe and well kept." Her gaze sharpened. "You will not run in halls, Arya Stark. Not here." "I won't run," Arya said, though she already burned to try the spiral steps 2 at a time. "Septa," Lisa said, finally letting the child go. "You will see that my niece's prayers are said. The Eyrie is no place for wildness." She looked again at Sansa and her mouth softened suddenly, almost melting. "We were girls together here once, Cat and I," she said. "We did not know then what great men would do with our lives. You will not be made pieces. Not while you are in my care." Sansa felt her throat tighten. The words sounded like kindness and tasted like a promise she did not wholly understand. "Yes, Aunt," she said. They were given a suite that looked out upon the Vale like a map unrolled at their feet, fields and forest and the river the Co. Lore of New Steel. Servants brought hot water and honeyed milk and bread crusted with salt. Sansa ate without tasting and then slept badly. Dreams snared by wind and by a long fall that never landed. When she woke, a raven was croaking to itself on the sill. The message it had brought hung beneath the band on its leg, white ribbon tied with Winterfell's wolf. Septa Mordane broke the seal with her fingers shaking. She read silently, then passed the parchment to Sansa. The words crawled like ants and bit. "Everyone, come to the Eyrie. Guard them. Keep them from wandering. Trust Nestor Royce. Do not let any man of Lannister enter those halls. Say to Lisa that I ask this for Cat's sake if not mine. The king hunts. If he returns, I will have need to speak truth before the throne. If he does not, the truth will be a blade drawn. Eddard Stark, Hand of the King." Sansa pressed the parchment to her chest. She had thought the danger part of King's Landing and the safety part of the Vale. She had not yet realized that danger could be a raven and safety could be a door that bolted from the outside. They saw their mother within a fortnight. Astonishingly, Catelyn Stark rode through the gates of the moon with a small company hard as old oak. Beside her, chained and dusty, rode a dwarf on a shaggy palfrey, whose mismatched eyes took in the height with a wary amusement. Sansa ran down the steps and Arya ran past her. They collided with Catelyn so hard she staggered. Then she laughed and cried at once and kissed each of their faces until her tears made tracks on their cheeks. "My hearts," she said when she could speak. "My brave girls." Arya looked past her at the dwarf. "Is that the imp?" she asked. "The one who?" "Arya?" Catelyn said warningly, and kissed her hair again as if the name and the kiss might undo what had already been done in the world. "Yes, I took him. He will answer to Lisa and to the gods." "He's funny," Arya said, unafraid to stare. The dwarf raised 2 fingers to his brow in a mock salute and grinned with all his teeth. Catelyn's face changed when Lisa swept into the hall to receive them. Sisterly Joy sat awkwardly with Lisa's thin patience. She scolded Catelyn for bringing so much storm into her mountain, and Catelyn scolded Lisa for not opening the veil when the world went wrong. They kissed and smiled with old habits, and pulled each other's braids for words the girls were not meant to hear when they were children. Sansa watched and wanted to believe they loved. She wanted a home where women could be safe together. But there was a tension to her aunt that made Sansa think of threads drawn too tight in a loom, ready to snap or to cut the fingers that plucked them. And her mother's eyes, when the talking turned to men's deaths on roads, were not safe eyes. They were the eyes she wore when father rode away and the winter wind scraped the stone. Tyrion Lannister was taken to a sky cell. Sansa had never seen one. Lisa would not allow it for children's eyes. Arya found a crack in Judy's and slipped, as water slips, to see the door that led to the bright blue beyond. She whispered about it in the night, eyes wide, sitting cross-legged on her bed. "It has a slanted floor," she hissed. "So you slide if you sleep. The sky is the floor, Sansa, and you can see the whole Vale under your toes, and you could fall out if you rolled over. The jailer is named Mord, and he's got a voice like rocks." "Be quiet," Sansa whispered back, hot with fear and fascination all at once. "We aren't to talk of such things." "Then we will not," Arya said, and did. When the trial came, the high hall of the Eyrie was filled with people Sansa did not know, and one or two she did. The banners of old houses hung gray-blue from the rafters. Waynwood, Redfort, Hunter, Corbray. Maya Stone slipped in near the door and stood on her toes to see. The dwarf asked for trial by combat, and Lisa's mouth pinched like a drawn purse string. "If you must," she said, as if he had asked for cake. She named Ser Vardis Aegon, brave and slow with age, her captain. A Sellsword stepped forward for the dwarf. Brawn, lean and amused. He looked like a man who never asked permission to do anything. They fought. Sansa had seen tourney knights in gilded harness crash together and fall laughing. This was not that. The sound of it was the ring of steel and the breath of a man growing winded and the snarl of leather. Bronn moved like a cat around a tethered dog, not brave in a song's way, but alive in a way songs never told. Ser Vardis at last went to his knees. His breath a roar Sansa could hear over her own heart. Bronn stripped him of his shield and stayed out of his reach and kicked him down when he tried to rise, then put steel between rings of mail. The hall exhaled all at once like a bellows. Lisa's little lord clapped his hands and screamed with strange delight, then began to cry. Catelyn Stark did not flinch. Her mouth was a line cut with a knife. Sansa pressed her knuckles into her mouth and tasted skin. Arya watched with her chin up and her eyes hot. After Catelyn came to their chamber, she looked so tired Sansa did not know how to touch her. "We cannot stay," Catelyn said quietly. "Your aunt will not march, not even if the Riverlands burn. She says the Vale must be safe for Robert. She is not wrong and not right. I must ride to your brother. Tyrion is loose to ride as he will. There will be war." "Mother," Sansa began, and the word crumbled. "I will not take you into that." Catelyn cupped her daughter's face. "I am grateful you came here. Your father meant you safe." "Father will come too," Sansa whispered. "When the king returns." Catelyn looked away. "Pray to any gods that will listen." They kissed again at dawn, and the girls watched their mother ride out, the company around her like a small, defiant tower moving across the valley. The air was cold and deep. Maya Stone touched Arya's sleeve once, in passing, and Arya did not shake her off. Messages came now under white ribbon and red, under seals of wax and wax broken. One from Lord Renly, scattered to 100 whispers like a bag of seeds. The king had been gored by a boar on a hunt and lay dying. Then another, fast on it, as if the birds had flown wing to wing. The king was dead. It felt to Sansa as if the mountain, carved by patient years, had shifted underfoot. The Vale did not change. Lisa shut the moon door not because it was safer, but because she liked to choose when it opened. Sentries drilled, bread baked, the wind cut. Sansa began to find the shape of days. She visited Maester Coleman and learned the names of herbs that kept a small boy's heart calm. She sat with Nestor Royce at the gates of the moon when Lisa sent her down and learned the measures of grain and the way to smooth a dispute over rights to pasture, so that two men could leave the hall with half of what they demanded and most of what they needed. She rode very carefully on the broad trails below the Eyrie with Miranda Royce, Nestor's sharp-eyed daughter, who laughed too loudly and then more quietly when Sansa did not laugh with her. "You do not know yet that all men are fools," Miranda said cheerfully one afternoon, after a hawk had fouled her sleeve and she had cursed and then smiled at the bird anyway because well-bred ladies did not curse hawks. "But you will." Sansa managed to smile. "Not all," she said, and heard the falseness even as she said it. "Some are cruel besides." Miranda tilted her head. "Someone hurt your heart," she said. "But hearts are made to be hurt, or what would be the point of them?" "To love," Sansa said, surprising herself. "To die of it?" Miranda teased. Don't worry, the veil is dull. Only death makes it sing, and we have not had much of that yet. She sobered. Do you think your aunt will ever let you go home? I am at home, Sansa said, before she could stop herself. It was not true. It had not been true since the journey south, and it would not be true until a wolf ran free under snow. But there were kinds of lies that were like bandages. Arya did not ride with Miranda. She ran. She ran up spiral steps and across balconies, ran errands for Maya Stone and beat the servants' boys at games they had played their whole lives. Not because she cheated, but because she learned their rules faster than they did. She found a place on a ledge of rock where you could lie flat and look down 1,000 feet and see hawks gliding. And she did not tell Sansa about it because Sansa would have said a prayer and then told Septa Mordain. She practiced with a stick the way Syrio had taught. Weight here, breath there, eyes in every direction. She missed Needle the way you miss the taste of berries in winter. Ned's letters became shadows. The last she received from him before letters stopped came with only 3 lines. Stay where you are and stay silent. I am sore beset. Tell Arya the cat must be quiet to catch the bird. Eddard. Septa Mordain read it and set it by the candle and looked at Sansa as if she were supposed to be a woman now without anyone telling her where to find the steps to get there. We will not show your aunt that letter, the Septa said. And you will not tell your sister it says anything useful. She will take it for a command. She will, Sansa agreed distantly, because everything in her was going cold. The letter after that was not a letter. It was a rumor that crawled up the mountain on a peddler's cart like the last of summer. Men in the hall were laughing and not laughing, looking toward the doors and then pretending they had not. Sansa tried to walk past them like a lady. One of them, a hunter man, reached out kindly and stopped her with his hand on the air, not on her flesh. My lady, he said, and she knew before he finished. The boy king ordered it. On Baelor's steps. Your father. She did not hear the rest. The wind took it. She found she was moving without knowing how. Past Maester Coleman's green-smelling chamber, past the place where the rooks roost, to a little alcove where a narrow slit looked out over all the world. She pressed her forehead to the stone until it hurt, and still it did not hurt enough. Later she had the thought that if she had been in King's Landing, her father might still have died, and she would have died with him in some way. And if she had been in King's Landing, he might have lived, because the world would have been different. And either way she would have been remade. As it was, she felt as if the mountain had opened and swallowed her, and she had to learn to breathe rock. Arya heard from Maya Stone, who heard from a man from Gulltown who had heard in a dockside tavern, and she did not scream. She broke a stick across her knee and then another. Then she went to the chest under Septa Mordain's bed where Ned Stark had said he would put the sword away and found only silk and mothballs and the smell of lavender. He took it with him, Septa Mordain said, and her voice was so flat that Arya wanted to bite her. He said he would keep it safe. He is dead, Arya said. Yes. He is dead, Arya said again, because if she said it enough times it might become a thing she could hold. Septa Mordain tried to take her hand. Arya pulled it away. She went out into the wind and found Maya Stone and said, Show me the way down the mountain by night. Maya's face, open and usually full of laughter, closed like a door. No, she said. You're a little lady and your aunt would flay me. My aunt cannot reach you if I run, Arya said, and the rage came up then, salt as tears and bitter as blood between teeth. He is dead, and those who killed him wear crowns. My brother marches. I will not sit in a room and learn sewing and be told that all of this is a lesson. Show me. You will fall, Maya said. Then I will learn to fall today so I know how not to fall tomorrow. Arya had always been a terror when she set her teeth to something. Ned had said once that she had Brandon's temper and Lyanna's wildness and his mother's stubborn toes. Maya saw it now inside and then swore and then said, If you go with me. If we are caught together. You will do as I say with your feet and with your breath. You will keep quiet until I tell you to scream. Go and get anything that will not clink when you move. No cloaks to snag. Leather, not wool. A water skin. Food that does not crumble. Arya went and came back with a small knife she had taken from the kitchens and tucked in her boot. She had no sword, but she had hands and a body that wanted to move more than it wanted to sleep or be told stories. Sansa stood in the passage and watched them. "Where?" she asked, calm as ice on a clean pond. "To rob," Arya said. "To war." "You are a child," Sansa said. "You will die." "Then I will join father," Arya said simply. "And if I live, I will come back with a pack of wolves." "Let me go, Sansa." Sansa did not reach to stop her. She wanted to, with the ferocity of a woman about to lose the other half of her childhood. But she had learned in the weeks since her father's death that some things cannot be held. You put your hand out and the wind goes through it. You clench your fist and you injure only yourself. "Take this," she said instead. She tugged a small brooch from her collar. A winter rose done in cheap tin and chips of blue glass, nothing any thief would bother with. "Give it back to me when you return, and I will scold you for the mud on your shoes." Arya took it solemnly and pinned it under her collar. "You will not tell Aunt Lisa." "I will do what I must," Sansa said, "but not before you have a night's grace." Maya took Arya by the wrist and pulled her into the mountain's night. They went without lamps, with the stars as pricked holes in a black cloth and the wind a hand. Maya knew the steps the way she knew the names of the mules, and Arya learned them as she went. This rock leans, this rope bites, this ledge is short and wants you to be smaller. Once, when Arya slipped and a scudding of pebbles fell like rain into forever, Maya flattened her against cold stone and waited until the shake went out of Arya's knees. "The mountain is like a man trying to make you fall in love with him," she whispered. "It will tell you how beautiful you are and then drop you if you trust it." "I will not trust it," Arya whispered back. At the bloody gate a sentry snored, and Maya had a word with a stable boy who had some of the right debts and some of the right kindnesses owed. They passed like two shadows stitched together, one tall and solid, one small and quivering with will. Below, in the gates of the moon, they rested until dawn. Maya bought them bread with a coin she had bitten and nodded at the old woman who spit to the side and said the wind carried strange tidings these days. Arya watched a hawk ride a current and wanted wings that would not be plucked. They did not head east to Gulltown and the sea but west toward the high road. And then, when the road bent toward danger, Maya left it and slid them into a world of goat trails and shepherd's warnings that only a girl who had grown up delivering letters and leading mules would know. Twice they saw riders on the road and lay like stones until the riders passed. Once a mountain cat watched them from a boulder, tail switching, and let them go because it had eaten already. Sansa, left behind, went to Lisa. She did it in daylight, in a gown of pale gray, with her hair braided in the northern style and a face she had taught to be still. "Aunt," she said, "Arya is gone." Lisa stared at her. "Gone?" "With Maya Stone," Sansa said. "Down the mountain. She will try to find our brother and mother." Lisa's breath came fast, like a small bird under a hand. Then she stood and smoothed her gown and smiled with her mouth only. "She cannot pass the bloody gate. I will send men." "You may catch her," Sansa said. She folded her hands in her lap to still them. "Or perhaps you will not." Lisa's eyes took in Sansa anew, measuring. "You will be safer here without her. She would have dragged you down. Wildness is a sickness in some girls. John was too weak. He would not let me." She stopped herself and smoothed again at a spot on her sleeve that did not exist. "You will stay with me. I have opened a letter from Lord Tywin Lannister proposing alliances that might be wise. The North will not hold, my sweet. You must not ride into that ruin." Sansa remembered a maple leaf pressed between the pages of an old book and how it had turned thin as paper and then to dust. She thought of winter roses and of needle hidden and then not. "The North will hold," she said softly, and surprised herself with the steadiness of it. "Even if we hold it alone in our hearts." "Do not be a fool," Lisa hissed, the smile slipping. "Do not be your mother. She throws herself at wars she cannot win. She thinks herself brave. We are safe here. We will keep you so." Sansa saw now the shape of it, why her aunt stroked safety like a cat, why she pressed on it until its eyes went flat. She thought of Robert Arryn's thin hands grasping at the air. She thought of the men at the bloody gate and the lords with their banners in the hall. "You will keep me," she said. "Or you will keep me." "Words," Lisa said and waved a hand. "Pretty and thin as glass." News moved slower than men on foot in the Vale. Ravens found the sea and went better. Word of Arya went ahead to the mountain clans. But Maya Stone knew someone in every cave and shed. She had given old John Aaron gossip and bread and blood. The mountain remembered. They slipped through those hard shoulders and came down into a valley bruised dark and wet with rain. Arya slept at last on moss and woke with her face pressed into the smell of it and a memory of her father sitting in the Winterfell godswood, telling a story in a voice meant for her alone. She did not weep. She had used all her tears on the ledge by the rookery. They were seen and not stopped, then seen and stopped and asked for coin or bread or news. Maya had coin, Arya had news, and the people who asked for it often gave them a kindness in return. At the last farm before the river, a woman with hands like knots and a mouth missing too many teeth to bite said, "There's a host marching from Moat Cailin, Northmen with big hearts and bad songs. If you are going that way, girl, keep sharp. Men in war look at girls and forget they have mothers." She tapped Arya's knife with a wry finger. "Keep that out of sight and in your grip." "I mean to," Arya said. They crossed the river by ferry, a slat-bellied thing that stank of old fish. Maya's eyes on Arya had changed. There was a respect now, grudging and warm. "You are a little goat," she said. "Stupid and nimble. Don't make me regret you." "I won't," Arya said, and meant it. They found the host at sunset. A serpent of men and banners and wagons stretched across the road and the fields on either side. The dire wolf of Stark ran at the front, heavy and sure. Arya stopped at the sight and closed her eyes because the relief was too much like pain. When she opened them, there was a man on a bony horse looking down at her with suspicion and curiosity not far behind. He had a jaw like a cliff and graying hair and eyes that had measured lots and found most of it wanting. "Who are you?" he demanded. "A goat," Arya said, then remembered herself. "Arya of House Stark. This is Maya Stone. We come from the Eyrie." The man blinked once, as if he had not expected the lie to be that big right on his doorstep. Then he shook his head and called over his shoulder in a voice that carried, "Hallis, if this is the king's sister, I'm the maiden. Come and show me I'm Ro." "No, they." Hallis Malin pushed through men like a man pushed through grain. He looked at Arya and his face changed in a way Arya would remember until she died. He fell to one knee and put his hand to his heart. "My lady," he said, and his voice cracked. "By the gods, we thought you." Maya Stone let out a breath she had been holding for 3 days. She grinned and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand when no one was looking. "I will take my coin now if there is coin to be had," she said lightly to no one in particular, and then softer to Arya. "Do not forget to breathe." The camp was 1,000 small worlds, each with its own fire. Men shouted for wine, for bread, for dice that loved them. Arya walked through it as if in a dream, and then Robb was there, taller than she remembered and thinner, with a face cut sharper and a commander's cloak clasped with the direwolf's head. When he saw her, he did not speak for a heartbeat, as if words were little things that could only diminish the size of what he felt. Then he pulled her into an embrace that hurt and felt right. "Arya," he said into her hair. "Arya." "How?" "With feet," Arya said, because it was easiest, and he laughed a little choke of a laugh that reminded her suddenly he was not only the king in the north to these men, but also her brother who had once stuck a frog in her shoe. He held her back at arm's length to look. "You're too thin," he said, which was rich from him. "And you have a knife in your boot. So will you if you're wise," Arya said. He sobered. "You know about father." "Yes." Her voice did not break. There was nothing left that could break. "I am here to kill the ones responsible." Robb's mouth twisted like their mothers did when someone said something foolish and brave. "You're here to be safe," he said. "I cannot lose. I'm here to be near when you need me," Arya said. "And to learn to kill. That can be later if it must. But not never." He looked at her a long time, And Arya learned then that kingship was made of holding your little sister and knowing the right thing would hurt you both and doing it anyway. "You'll stay near me," he said at last. "With men I trust, and you will do as they say." "I'll do as I must," she said, and he let that stand between them like a treaty. In the Vale, Sansa learned to sit on the dais and be thought of without making any noise at all. Men spoke as if her ears were jewelry. She learned to make her voice like warm milk when she wished it and like a knife when she had to cut a loaf too thick to swallow. Letters to Robb went out under seals Lisa did not recognize. She learned which maids were loyal to their wages and which were loyal to the nearest story. When Lord Yohn Royce came up the mountain, iron glinting and bronze runes etched with old pride, he bowed to Lisa with courtesy and then to Sansa with something like respect. "We are all poorer without Lord Eddard's counsel," he said gravely. "My lady, if I had my will, the Knights of the Vale would ride with your brother. I have not my will. Not yet." "Not yet," Sansa echoed. She did not look at Lisa. She did not look at Miranda, whose bright eyes missed little. "The Vale is a high place. Winds shift." "It is the habit of winds," Royce agreed. His gaze, gray as old iron, took her in. "You have your mother's face, but your father's quiet. Keep it. You'll be needing both if this winter is like the ones we tell children about to make them put on their cloaks." Lisa smiled until her lips turned thin. "Bronze Yohn would make a song of everything," she said. "He forgets that songs are dangerous in ears that wish to be brave. We will not feed the North's war with the blood of our sons. The Vale remembers what it owes, to itself." Royce's eyes did not leave Sansa. He bowed again. "To itself, then," he said, and left with a ring of men at his back. They were courteous to servants and kind to dogs and moved like a promise. Nestor Royce kept the gates of the moon as if his honor were a blade in need of always being sharpened. Sansa visited often under pretexts Lisa could not object to and learned the slate-color ways of accounting and the simple arithmetic of loyalty. She wrote letters under the eye of a scribe who pretended he could not read them, and learned from Maester Coleman a dose that stilled a child's fluttering heart without spilling it. When Robert Arryn woke screaming from dreams of falling, Sansa sat with him and told him stories of sprites in Winterfell's hot pools who never felt the cold if they sang to it properly. He quieted. Later Lisa said, "You are good with him," in a tone that sounded like a threat softened by need. "I remember being small," Sansa said. "One forgets, and one should not." "One forgets to be obedient too," Lisa said. "I have had word that your sister has fled. This is what comes of letting girls run like colts. You will not imitate her." "No," Sansa said. "I will not." The lords of the Vale began to visit with greater frequency. Some came openly, riding up the stone steps as their fathers had done 100 years ago, banners snapping, their ladies with them and their household knights and their speech formal. Some came by night to the gates and left again before dawn, like men with lovers they could not name. Sansa listened at both kinds of tables and learned that the Vale's peace was a blanket that could be soaked in oil and set alight if too many hands tugged at it. One night she stood on the high balcony and watched stormlight flicker in the belly of the clouds over the narrow sea. The air smelled of iron and far rain. Miranda leaned on the balustrade beside her and said, "If I throw a pebble now, it will fall for a day and a night before it hits anything that notices it." "Then don't," Sansa said and almost smiled. "Are you sorry you came?" Miranda asked. "I did not come," Sansa said. "I was sent. It is less like being sorry than like reading a story you did not choose and finding you are written in it anyway." Miranda's mouth twisted. "I like you," she said. "I think it's very bad for me." "It is bad for me that you like me," Sansa said. "I will ask you for things." "I know," Miranda said, and her eyes were bright with the pleasure of danger. "I have a cousin at Redfort who has a cousin at Runestone who has a squire who has foolish friends. I will have them carry your letters under the lining of a saddle. Men never think to look there." "Thank you," Sansa said simply. "There will be a price," Miranda said, but she did not sound like a Lannister when she said it. "Not coin," Sansa said. "No." Miranda straightened, shook her hair back, laughed softly into the wind. A story, sometime, about someone you loved when you were very silly. I will hoard it and take it out when I need to feel better about being human." Sansa thought of Joffrey's face, shifted in anger like a mask on a stick, and of a boy in the Godswood of Winterfell with a needle and thread making a rag doll for a little sister who had fallen into a nettle patch. "I will find the right one," she promised. A raven came with black wax and the stamp of a kraken on parchment as thick as his finger. It was for Lisa, not for Sansa, but news was a river in a house and found its low places. Balon Greyjoy had set himself up as a king on his rock, and the seas were fat with ships that stopped where they were not wanted. Sansa thought of her brother with too many fronts and too few hands and learned more about the geography of fear. Another message said Renly had declared himself king. A green velvet crown and a laugh that died when the sword came near. The veil did not laugh. It weighed and measured. Men with good names had bad cousins who took Lannister coin. Ser Lyn Corbray began to smile too brightly in halls. Nestor Royce polished his patience. Lady Anya Waynwood wrote letters that sounded like prayers and promises both. Sansa's own letters went and went. In one she told Robb of the temper of the Vale and of the tides of men who would ride if given a reason they could tell their sons. In another she told her mother where to find Maya Stone if Arya did not send letters of her own. She told them, too, in the plainest words she could, that Littlefinger had a root in Lisa's thoughts like a plant in a crack, from a seed long ago and a gardener no one had watched for. Lisa did not say his name often, but when she did, her voice did not sound like a lady's voice. It sounded like a girl's voice remembering a stolen kiss and the taste of a thing that had turned to ash and wanting it to be sugar again. Sansa began to dream that the Eyrie was a house made of glass. In the dream she was walking through rooms where everything shone, and her reflection moved where it pleased even when she stopped. She reached for a door and her hand left fingerprints she could not wipe away. Outside the glass there were banners and men in bronze runes, and a direwolf sitting in clean snow watching her with a patience that thawed nothing and warmed her all the same. When she woke, she would go to the rookery and run her fingers along the soft throats of the birds. Maester Coleman would pretend not to notice and then cough once, meaning gently go before Lisa finds you. She would go, because disobedience that left no mark was better than defiance that set fire to the curtains. Autumn crept down from the mountains in little ways. The mornings tasted sharper. The servants began to talk about extra blankets as if blankets were a line against armies. Nestor Royce tallied grain with a headman's attention and asked Sansa, late one evening when the candles were low, "Have you any word from the north, my lady? True word, not the kind that arrives in cups." "Robb has one at the Whispering Wood," she said, because she had that much to give. She watched the way the news moved across his face. Pleasure first, then calculation. "He took Jaime Lannister. He sent him to father." She stopped because the word tangled and cut. "He sent him to Riverrun, to my mother's keeping." Nestor nodded once. "Then the Lannister dog is on a short chain, and Lord Tywin's teeth are bared where he sits." "Good. What will your aunt do?" "What she has done," Sansa said, with a steadiness she had learned like a song she did not like but could not get out of her head. "She will keep the veil shut against war, but doors that stay shut have hinges that rust. She cannot shut the thoughts of men." "No," Nestor agreed, and he smiled for the first time that day. "No, she cannot." Arya learned different things. She learned the sound of men sleeping and the difference between that and men pretending to sleep. She learned that the smell of onions made her mouth water even when she was too tired to eat. She learned there were a dozen ways to sharpen a knife, and one good way to hold one when you did not mean to be noticed and one when you did. She earned a scar on her forearm where a clumsy boy misjudged a drill and cried harder for the cut than for his own shame. Arya told him stupid jokes until he laughed and then punched him in the shoulder because he had nearly cut her. The men around Robb had names that sat well in a woman's ear. Umber, Glover, Mormont, Karstark. They called her little lady and then stopped when she spit and ran their drills better than their squires. She slept under canvas and wished for the shape of the hot pools in Winterfell around her bones. When ravens came, men stood straighter than they did for storms. She heard about Joffrey from a boy with pimples and a gift for mimicry. He could make his face look stupid and cruel at once, and he did the voice so well on a cold night that 3 men had to get up and stamp about to shake it off. She heard about Circe from a man who had once seen her at a wager and won the right to kiss her hand, and who still spoke of the smell of her skin as if it were a curse. She heard about Tywin from everyone, and learned that fear was a story people told each other so they could be sure it was only a story. When word came of the Riverlands burned and rebuilt and burned again, Arya stood by a ditch full of mud and thought about setting a field on fire and running fast enough not to die from the smoke. She thought of the mountain clans who had let them pass and of the men in bronze whose runes meant something older than the 7. She wondered if those men would come down to the Trident, and what the sound of that would be like. It was late when a rider from the Vale caught up with the host, hard-bitten and hoarse from shouting his name to sentries who did not care. He bore a letter sealed with Royce bronze and Waynwood green. It was for Robb, but Arya saw the way his face changed after reading it and went to him without waiting to be sent. "What?" she demanded. "What now?" He rubbed his eyes with thumb and forefinger as if he could push the exhaustion back into his bones where it belonged. "Lord Yone writes that the Lords declarant stir," he said. "He says there are as many words as there are stones in a field, but the gist is, the Vale will not be closed forever. If I send the right request, and if I send the right man to carry it, and if the winds are kind to banners, they will ride." Arya felt a grin climb onto her face like a sunrise she had not asked for but could not refuse. "Send me," she said immediately. Robb snorted. "No." "Send me," she insisted. "Or send the letter to Sansa with someone who will tell her Lisa cannot be trusted with anything that breathes. She will know how to move inside those walls. She already moves in them." Robb had written to Sansa and received answered words that were level as an ice field and careful as a hunter in snow. He had felt, reading them, as if his little sister had learned to build a castle in a place where castles were illusions. He trusted Arya with his life. He was learning to trust Sansa with other men's lives. "I will send Tallheart," he said at last. "He has a good mouth and a pretty beard, and Lady Waynwood likes pretty beards." "Send him with this," Arya said, and tugged the little brooch from under her collar. "Give it to Sansa and tell him to say, 'I do not like to be owed.'" Robb took the tin rose as if it were gold. He put it in his pouch with a care he did not give to maps. "If I have you both working at my war," he said dryly, "perhaps I shall not need any men at all." "You will always need men," Arya said. "Men are good for holding the other end of things." He laughed then, a Real laugh, and it warmed the tent briefly like soup. In the Eyrie, Lisa watched Sansa with love that had soured at the edges. She called her sweetling and stroked her hair and told her stories that always ended with someone being kept in a tower to be safe. Sansa listened and nodded and learned where the moon door's hinges were oiled, not because she intended to open it, but because knowledge like that weighed in a hand like a knife. She learned, too, how to make Robert drink his tisane instead of throwing the cup. When Ser Tallheart came, he went first to Lisa in the high hall and presented the letter and the handsome beard. He spoke roundly. She smiled thinly and told him to leave the Vale's matters to the Vale. He bowed and went to Nestor and drank ale with men who had less handsome beards and more patience. Night fell. A handmaid with hair like wheat and a mouth like a secret slipped through a corridor with a small package to Sansa's chamber, and Sansa opened it and found the brooch she had given to Arya and a scrap of parchment with 2 words in a familiar hand. Not never. She sat with it for a long time. Then she went to the window and watched lightning far out to sea. The storm would take a day to come in. She could time a thing by that. The next morning she wore a gown of wool as a lady of Winterfell would and sat beside Lisa while men made arguments that sounded like water running over stone. When Lord Gerald Grafton said, "Gulltown's ships rot in harbor. They creak the way old men's joints do," Sansa said, in a voice sweet and practical. "Ships that do not sail sink faster than those that do." And Lisa's eyes cut to her like knives. When Ser Lyn Corbray smiled at nothing in particular, Sansa smiled back exactly as much. When Nestor Royce asked for more levies for guard duty, Sansa signed the tally she had made the night before, and sent a boy with strong legs to the gates of the moon to put it into orders before Lisa could unmake it by wondering aloud if perhaps the men were tired. Lisa saw the shape of what was happening and reached for a knife with words on it. "You are very bold," she whispered to Sansa that afternoon in a passage where the wind made the torches gutter. "You forget whose house this is." "I forget nothing," Sansa said. "But I remember that houses fall when they lean too much in one direction. I remember, too, that if the north falls, there will be no one to send milk of the poppy when the Vale cries in the winter." "You threaten me?" "No," Sansa said, and smiled like a courteous executioner. "I remind you that we are kin." Lisa's face twisted and smoothed, twisted and smoothed. She drew a breath that rattled like paper. "You think to open my doors for him," she said, meaning Robb, meaning war, meaning change, meaning everything she had locked with herself in the highest room. "I think to keep them oiled," Sansa said. The storm came in at sunset, hard and long. The moon did not rise or rose invisible. Men huddled around fires and told each other that storms at sea meant good fishing if you could live to cast your nets after. Sansa went to Miranda and said, "Now," and Miranda grinned and said, "Yes." And they set a trail of small things that would make it possible for the Knights of the Vale, when they finally swore their oaths to ride, to find their helmets and their horses ready and the gates unlocked. Sansa did not sleep. She listened to the mountain speak, to the sound of the wind in the holes the builders had left so the hall would sing. In the morning, when the world was scrubbed and the clouds lay like torn cloth on the valley, a raven sat on the sill, pecking at its own reflection. It bore a letter from Riverrun with a trout pressed into the wax. Her mother wrote that Robb had been named king in the north by men she trusted, and that this made her proud and afraid in equal measure. She wrote that Arya was with him and had not shamed the house, and that Sansa should keep herself alive and quiet. Sansa set the letter under her pillow, where she kept the cheap brooch also, and breathed until the stone did not feel so heavy in her chest. By the time the Vale's lords declared, it was almost winter in the shade. They did not say they declared for Robb, nor for Catelyn, nor against the Lannisters. They declared for old oaths and for a future that would not choke them when they tried to tell it to their sons. Ser Donnell Waynwood stood with Lady Anya and Lord Yone and Nestor Royce and Lord Grafton, and men who had pretended not to know each other nodded with relief to find their secrets matched. Lisa stood before them in the high hall and tried to say no, and found the word turned to ash in her mouth. She was not brave and she was not a coward. She was a woman who had built a house around a fear and discovered too late that fear eats its own walls. She had Sansa's hand in hers, and she squeezed it until Sansa almost cried out, then let go as if the touch had burned her. "You will regret this," she said to the air, to her sister far away, to the dead man in King's Landing, to herself. "Perhaps," said Bronze Yone, calm as snow, "but not before breakfast. And I am hungry." The Knights of the Vale buckled on more than they. Our best mail. They buckled on their histories, and the stories their fathers had told them, and the way their women looked at them when the wind changed. The bloody gate opened and the road beyond it looked like a mouth about to speak. At the gates of the moon, the horses stamped and blew and tossed their manes. Sansa stood on the steps and watched them go. Miranda squeezed her hand and then took it away, and Sansa's fingers closed on empty air and did not tremble. She saw Ser Lyn Corbray ride with a smile like a polished knife, and Nestor Royce ride with the weight of practicality like a stone on his saddle, and Yone Royce ride with the runes on his armor bright as old gods. Men shouted, not too loudly. When you leave home, you do not shout. You take its smell with you under your tongue and spit if you have to, and that is enough. Lisa did not come to watch. She sat in her room and held Robert and told him stories about birds that never had to fly because the sky bent down to bring them food. He fell asleep and woke mid-story, and she began again, and the story became a trap she set for her own mind. Sansa went back to her chamber and took the tin rose from beneath her pillow. She set it on the windowsill where the light found it and made it look like something finer. The veil spread away beneath her like a map, and beyond it she could imagine rivers strung with banners and tents like mushrooms after rain, and a boy king who was her brother and already half a man. She imagined Arya beside him, sullen and bright, a knife in her boot and a scar on her forearm that Sansa would not kiss because it hurt to be reminded of the skin that had been. She did not whisper a prayer, not aloud. She did not ask the Seven for anything. She stood until the stone wall felt like a friend, unyielding and patient. Somewhere, a rook laughed in the way rooks do, which sounds like mockery and is not. The world had shifted and would shift again. She could not stop it, and she would not be dragged by it either. She would place her feet. She would keep a door oiled. She would hold a house she did not own with nothing but her voice and the steadiness of her hands. She would learn to balance on a ledge without falling. Not because she lacked fear, but because fear was not a thing you could let carry you, any more than the mountain was. And far below, down the long road past the bloody gate, men in blue and bronze and gray moved toward whatever came next, and the wind carried the clink of their harness like a kind of music.